Thank you. We'll kick off, we have. I'm just having a look. We've got about 20 something people around the sides and in the background. I know some we can see, some we can't. So welcome all, and thank you for joining us. For those people who are joining from the north, in Queensland, I hope you're keeping dry, and I hope your schools and yourselves are seeing some sort of normality starting to return after the weather event over the last week or two. First of all, Mel, I'll hand over to you for acknowledgement of country.
Thank you. I know there are people just as well, Derek, just been texting me about trying having some issues. So just
Yep,
if
I'm
you
letting
can
them
keep
know
an eye
as
on
they
that
happen.
while
Yep.
I do this. But thank you everyone for
You
joining us
mind?
this
Oh, you hit the
evening.
record. Oh, you did hit recording.
Yep,
Sorry, Mel.
all going, all good.
Yep, yep.
Um, I shared a couple weeks ago in our last webinar this beautiful piece of artwork that I found from a local Gubby Gubby artist, which is the lands on which I am, the beautiful Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Hasn't been so sunny the last few days, but um, and it was created for a company that depict a journey of people that trust each other, passion for social work, wanting to come together and be our united voice as a collective. And it really resonated with Derek and I in terms of our mission here at EduShift as well. So, really keen for everyone, if you want to pop in the chat where you are around Australia or the world, even tonight, go for it. But at this time, we really want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are joining from all around the country and around the world this evening. And as we gather virtually tonight, we just want to pay our respects to our elders, past and present, and extend those respects to any First Nation people that are with us this evening.
Thank you, Mel. And Thanks, colleagues, for joining us here tonight. And we've joined because this focus on this webinar, which should be take about 50 to 60 minutes, will be here. The focus on this webinar is looking at timetabling. And you might be saying, why did we actually pick a topic on timetabling, particularly when the last one a few weeks ago was on collaborative teaching, and what does that mean around the world, and how does it support contemporary learning, whereas timetabling being that logistical type of operation that we do in schools? Well, it probably has a huge part to play when it comes time to discussion, because it actually, when we did a survey, it actually came out as one of the top 5 as something that can support contemporary learning and also get in the road. So we're going to use tonight to be able to chat about that. And in doing so, we've brought a number of experts from around the world. And I'd like to welcome Professor Stephen Heppel. I know Stephen needs no introduction. We all know Stephen. However, I would like to welcome Stephen. And Stephen, your current, I usually go off my own memory of you, Stephen, but I'll read out what's been promoted around the place. Stephen is a British educationalist, writer and speaker. He's held professorships at Angelia Ruskin University and Bournemouth University, and he currently holds the Felipe Segovia Chair of Learning Innovation at Universidad Camilo Jose Cela in Madrid. He was an advisor to the British government's Department of Education, co-authoring the Stevenson Report, and still I know that Stephen advises many governments around the world, and he was just talking to me about a group of schools he was building for Saudi Arabia near the Red Sea. And he's in his past lives chairs many educational technology committees. Welcome, Stephen.
Yeah, hi there.
Thanks, Stephen. And Lou, are you with us at the moment? I know she might be late. No, Mel? That's okay. She might run late. David Moore. David Moore is Deputy Secretary of Learning at Faith Lutheran College, Redlands. And David's been the principal advisor, enabler of how to make timetabling and scheduling in a school flexible and agile to support contemporary structures of curriculum in a school. And he'll elaborate on what that means and how it looks to him. So it's great to have someone right on the ground there who's taken up the charge. And we will, and welcome, David.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you and can see you. David's
Beautiful.
we've hopefully spotlighted each of us here. So shortly, there's a number of participants, a number of attendees, which we can't see on any of the screens, but you'll be able to see us. And David was having a little problem with his laptop, so he's moved to his iPhone. That's why he's in that portrait mode. Thank you all, and there'll be time to engage tonight. And what we're going to do is work through how the format's going to be. Now, it is informal, so we can go off course in terms of the format, but just for your benefit, throughout the night, we're going to actually focus on a couple of questions, and hopefully you can go away with something tangible. Let's go to the format, Mel.
Thanks. Just realised I'd muted myself. Sorry. So just about format tonight, obviously there's going to be lots of chat and we're going to be asking lots of questions and speaking with our experts this evening around their insights in terms of Beyond the Bells. But throughout the night, if you have any questions, we really want you to throw them in the chat. I'll be keeping a really close eye on the chat tonight, and we will have time towards the end to answer any questions that come up in the chat. If you want to ask them specifically, you can just add like talk next to it for me so I know to come back and say, hey, Sarah wants to ask this question. Sarah, do you want to unmute and over to you? If you just want us to ask those questions, just throw them in the chat because I might just try and correlate if there's any common themes and bring that up as well. So that will be a really important part of our night. Remember, the more you input and the more you're engaged in this, the more you're going to get out of it. And that's what we want for everyone here. Also, like tech issues, it's just, I know we've been living on Zooms and screens for so long, but it doesn't matter how it happens, there are always issues. So anything happens, send me a message. If you're on and something's happening, just send me a message in the chat. But my email is quickly there and my phone number as well. So even if you want to quickly pop both of those down, I'll have my email and my phone next to me the whole evening. So if you do have any things happen, don't stress as well, because everyone that has registered tonight will get a recording of the evening as well within the next 24 hours. And we will also send you a certificate of attendance, which you can go towards your hours for whichever state you're in terms of that professional development.
Excellent. Thanks, Mel. We're actually going to address a number of provocations or questions tonight. And one of the first ones we're going to ask our guests to just chat about is, first of all, why? What's the problem with traditional timetables in the contemporary world or contemporary schooling? Then later on, we're going to talk about, what are some examples and emerging models of contemporary timetabling? It'll be wide and varied for many. And I'm sure David's going to walk us through in terms of how he's transformed their scheduling and timetable at Faith Lutheran College. And then before we complete, we're going to ask some of our guests and any of you as well in terms of practical strategies for transforming the way you go about scheduling and timetabling in a school. And it was only just, I think Mel and a few others just reminded me of some other ones that have occurred throughout the years, which is wonderful. So we'll tap into that. Lou, if you're out there, just give us a chat on the chat screen. Stephen, can I just jump over to you? And Stephen, you've got a wealth of knowledge in this area, but if we focus first of all on the problem of traditional timetabling.
Yeah, it's a developing problem, and I think what's happened, and maybe COVID was the provocation that kicked all this off, but we're very clearly, I think, moving from a world of compliance to a world of creativity and ingenuity. there won't be very many jobs for compliant children because AI and probably AGI, more to the point, will simply do that. Computers are very good at repeating things, doing things regularly, being inexhausted, and people are very good at being very good at deep knowledge and very good at collaborating and very good at being ingenious, And so suddenly we're looking for schools that encourage that ingenuity and creativity. And the simple phrase, I think, is that if you're looking for an overarching trend in education, the walls are getting softer and lower. The edge of the day now blends into mornings, evenings, the weekend. We did a thing during COVID we set up a certificate for kids where they could record the things they were doing in learning while their schools were shut. And I don't think there was a kid out there who volunteered to set up a timetable for themselves. I mean, some schools tried to impose a timetable. You will be at the screen at 11 o'clock and I will be telling you useful things. But most of the kids were saying, tell you, I want to do some 3D printing in steel or want to be flying with drone or whatever, And they loved it. And by the way, they also went further and faster than the curriculum would have allowed them to do. So, softer lower walls is where we are. And the timetable has been one of the biggest walls. It's very hard to imagine a kid from this golden generation. And I'm sorry, by the way, I have a bit of a speech impediment because I've been in hospital with all these pipes in my throat. So if I sound a bit dopey, that's why. But it's very hard to imagine a kid, you're saying this is a very exciting year ahead. I can tell you exactly what you'll be doing at 11 o'clock on Tuesday in 4 months' time. You'll be sitting in that seat next to that child. And they think, yeah, right, mate, none of that. I went into a school just outside Manchester last thing, and then I'll shut up, let others talk. This was a school that had 127 children who turned up every day but refused to go to classes. So they turn up, they sit down, they have a coffee with each other, doing coursework, doing the GCSEs, helping each other, lots of mentoring going on. They'll turn up uniforms, fairly smart for Manchester. But they said, you think we're going back in our boxes? You've got another thing coming. And none of them had any sense of timetable. They had a sense of school starts at 9 o'clock and it finishes when we're done. And when we're done was almost never 4 o'clock, So they're out of the boxes. And the question is whether we stay in the boxes and wonder where the kids are gone, or we look for new structures. And over here, I think we're something like 30% of secondary age children miss at least a day of schooling every 2 weeks. So kids are just walking away from schools in droves, and it turns out that compliance wasn't the way to get them back. Engagement. And last tiny little rather lovely anecdote, down in Portland on the south coast, I built a school down there, which, funnily enough, my daughter is now head teacher in, so
oh, wow.
I'm glad I did it. And there's a tough old area, kids and families are all there because they want to live around there's a prison, huge prison, and the families are there to be near dad while he's in prison. So it's a tough area, but she's got the most fabulous stuff going on. We wanted to try and timetable science in particular in a grounded way so that they were doing science in local companies, And we had a group of kids were doing physics in Sunseeker. Sunseeker make those very posh big yachts that millionaires drive, Russian oligarchs and things. And so they were loving all this. And then we had a delegation came to us from the kids who said, we're not satisfied, we want to change things. And I went, oh, okay. And they said the trouble is we're getting on with our work, we're doing all the measuring, the tank testing, and we're loving all that, but we have to keep stopping to do the coursework. And we wondered if we just did the coursework on Saturdays, we could blitz it, was their phrase, blitz it. We do the whole thing on a Saturday. And during the weekday, we can get on with the important stuff, you know. And I think, in a way,
Yeah.
those slightly miscreant kids, you know, captured in that sentence the voice of a generation. You know, we want to blitz the compliance stuff. We want to get on with the learning, you know. And
Wow.
building timetables around that is not as hard as it seems, as I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll hear tonight, you know. But rigidity has got to go. That's the end of it. Really.
Beautiful. That's a great quote to end off. And thank you, Stephen. And over to you, David. Any further comments on, the why part? What is the problem with traditional timetabling? And I'm sure that you've been around to see some traditional timetables around the place.
I think the notion of traditional timetables, the issue with that is that people keep thinking in year levels and they keep thinking that it's the subject. Whereas I look at timetables as being an allocation of time for whatever purpose you want. And if you switch your thinking around the methodology, you still do timetabling, but you're swapping the idea that you have to think these year 8 kids must be in year 8, and therefore that's all the only place they can go. Whereas if you think,
Andy, go for a shot, please.
whereas I would say if you can allocate time in your timetable where the kids will then go to that time, you're changing your mindset and it's doable.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a bit of a mindset shift there and looking at the allocation of time and not being so rigid in the way that you're approaching the way that those blocks, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, like we always try to allocate a subject to a time, whereas why can't you allocate a time for the kids to do something in that time?
Yes.
So,
yes.
And because we all have to, we've all got restrictions around compliancy issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you've just got to show the compliances that what you're doing matches what they require. How you do it is up to you. You just got to convince them that what you're doing fits their purpose. So, and that's the challenge. Yeah, it's not always easy, but that's the way I really look at it. It's a
There's always going to be some juggling, isn't there? There's going to be some juggling, and you've got to share resources and all that. Mm.
Yeah, it's. I would love a free for all, but unfortunately, we're not in that mode at the moment. So we're still some constraints, but you can be a little bit flexible and creative.
And I think in the next question, you can talk about David how you just said it's not a free for all, and I know it's not a free for all at your school, but you've loosened it up because, and you didn't loosen it up for the sake of loosening it up. It's the innovative way that you've structured the curriculum in terms of what people want to do. So look forward to listening more of that. Thanks, David. Mel, can I ask you to jump in? I know Lou's not here, but you've got just as a rich story in terms of some of the schools that you're either principal at or have worked at in leadership in terms of way you've modified, or first of all, your thoughts on why traditional timetables just don't fit the contemporary model.
Yeah. Happy to talk, get on the spot, but here we go. I think I was just reading the other day, I'm not sure if people have seen it yet, but the Future of Jobs report, which was done by the World Economic Forum, that came out in January, for example, and it highlights really clearly that this shift from a content-driven world to a capability-driven world is what is required for the world we live in now, and what the students are saying for what we need for 2030 in the workforce. And that's not very far away, for example. But we still have, I think that everyone's highlighted here tonight, a very compliant, content-driven curriculum and world. And I think some of the parts of when you're practical around it, you feel like you can get stuck, if that makes sense, on, well, I can't change the curriculum and I can't change policy. But I like how David was speaking about what can you do in the sphere of your control. There is a lot of room to play, especially in that I feel like in Australia in that 7 to 10 space. But even in year 11 and 12, is movement too. So I just think it's around being creative and thinking a little bit outside of the box and having that lens of the skills and dispositions that you want to grow and flourish in your students as the main driver of your teaching and learning versus curriculum codes, for example. And I feel like if we even take those little steps, even if we're still stuck in some of the rigidity and the structure of a timetable, there's still some great steps forward, I think.
Thanks, Mel.
That's okay.
Great food for thought there. And, as we get down to, why, I know we're looking at the why traditional timetable doesn't fit, and we just talked about that. But what does this look like on the ground? What's driving us to actually transform contemporary learning? And I wrote down a question here for later, but I'll say it now. Where's the point that a person, a deputy in charge of timetabling, or a school's philosophy in terms of learning, what point do people say this just does not work in the way that we are doing schooling if we want these goals and visions and missions of contemporary learning to occur? At what point does it go, okay, crunch time, we can't do it that way. We have to look and be more flexible in that way. And so that leads me to jump back to David and the next question, in terms of what emerging models of contemporary timetabling are we starting to come up with? And in your case, David, could you tell us a little bit about the structure of, say, the secondary part of your school, and therefore how the timetable has enabled that, please?
Before I do that, I'll go back to your previous question. The reason you need to change is attendance as kids going to school, your behaviour at your school, and just for the simple fact, getting kids to learn. That's the key three things that any school would want to be making a change for. So we did that for that purpose. So to give you some idea, the last day of the year before Christmas, we had 97% attendance on the very last day of school.
Wow.
Because the kids want to come to school. So what we've done is we've created, we haven't ditched the Australian curriculum. We've ditched the traditional model of teaching the Australian curriculum. We don't do siloed teaching areas, so we don't do geography, history, music, whatever. The only ones we do is maths and English, because we have to convince people that we're actually doing something. We don't want to ditch maths and English at the same time. So what we've basically done is we call our year sevens our foundation year. I call it the halfway house between primary and secondary. So it runs a bit like primary, runs a bit like secondary. They have 4 core teachers who do the maths, English, humanities, sciences, PEs, Christian studies type stuff, because we're a Lutheran school. And then they have some specialist teachers doing the arts and the technologies. But these kids will be together, and on our timetable, it just says core. So the kids' timetable says core, might be from 8:30 to 10 o'clock. And within that time, the teachers and the kids structure how they want to do that time. Because the timetable is not telling us what we need to teach. We're saying, here's an allocation of time for you to do what you want. And that goes through, and that's a whole bunch of project-based learning throughout the whole year. When they get to year 8 and 9, 8, 9 and 10, we don't have academic year levels. So there was no year 8 science, no year 9 English, no year 10 science, or whatever it is, music. So we created 74 courses that are based around the Australian curriculum in 3 levels. And you don't have to be an Einstein to figure out level 1, 2, 3 matches year 8, 9, 10. But we allow the kids to make a choice of any course they like at whatever level they want to do it in, based on their abilities and their interests. So we would have things like Label for the Streets as a course. And that's actually a fashion course along with a service learning component and humanities, where they look at homelessness. The kids create backpacks, they do service learning of how to fundraise, the whole thing. And we've hooked up with a charity, look after homelessness, and the kids are providing a product that's valued to the community. So all of our courses must have a community connection, so there's value in the learning. So there's a whole range of, and to meet the Australian curriculum, yes, we've got to do a whole bunch of science stuff, we've got to do a whole bunch of humanities, we've got to do some sport. Well, we created the timetables that kids have choices. No matter what choice they do, they will be ticking the boxes for compliance. And that's my juggle to make it work. But so in doing that, we have kids who accelerate themselves, and year 11 and 12, they've started uni while they're still at school. So they've completed half their senior studies in year 12 while they're in year 11, and then they're going to go to university. And actually, in fact, one kid started today because we just came out of a cyclone, came to school today because we only opened to staff today, but he came in because he wanted to use the school's internet so he could join uni and start his uni course today. So it's a completely flexible process.
And it's vertical. And David, I've got that screen I just found just then as you were talking that has the list of your courses. Is it worth showing that?
Oh, why not?
Okay, I'll share. I just want to know if it's still current. I'll put it on now. Let's go to share. You might want to talk to it, David.
Yeah, well, so level 1, 2, and 3, they're obviously year 8, 9. They're based on the Australian curriculum standards. For level 1's year 8 standards, level 2's year 9, and level 3's year 10. Each one of those, the kids can choose. So they have to choose a maths and an English level. So some kids we find 85% of kids from year 7 will go to level 1, which is year 8, because that's where they are. The other 15% accelerate themselves or can move down a level and consolidate their work if they need to be. They then choose 5 courses for semester 1 and they choose 5 courses for semester 2. So it's a bit like the university mentality. You do a course, then you complete it on. Everything is tracked towards what happens in year 11, because I call year 11 and 12 boring school again, because we have to go back to whatever our sector says we have to do it in. But yeah, there's heaps of things. Like my most favourite one is supercarts. It's kids building billy carts to race at the end of the coursework, but at the same time, it's a business course because they've got to run everything. And so they've got to get business letters to write out to get sponsorship. Yeah, the whole notion, and to realise the simple fact that some kids might get $20 in their team, other teams might get $100, and I go, well, welcome to life, because that's how life works. It's not always fair. And at the end of the course, clear the school car park out, make a racetrack, and they're racing billy carts because they see there's an end point to what they're doing, not just a case of learning stuff and then forgetting it. And so, yeah, it's and we let the kids make free choice. If they make a mistake, they can come and see me and say, Mr. Moore, you made me do this course. I said, I know, I'm an idiot. I don't know what I did. Would you like to do something else? Yeah, yes, please. So it's all about choice for these kids.
Thanks, David.
Which gives them the ability to want to learn. If they have a choice, they will learn.
Thank you. And if anyone who's listening and would like some examples of some of those interdisciplinary vertical courses across 8, 9, and 10, and also 11 and 12s jump down into those courses if they've got free time or want to be able to see that it's more worthwhile to jump down there to polish up on something or to actually, actually extend their learning. It works that way as well. Then, contact. I'll give David's details, and he might be able to share some of those units of work. Stephen, you alluded to some different approaches to looking at timetabling, and I really loved how the students actually came up with the common sense question: why can't we do that on Saturday and do that here and do this, whatever, that sort of common sense thing. Any other ideas, Stephen, that come to mind in terms of let's approach this differently?
Yeah, I'll give you some nice examples, really, and I think one thing to get hold of is that the problem with the timetable is it said this is the learning time, and actually this is the learning time. It's the whole 24/7, 365. So in Madrid, we had this really nice project of. Let me just pop it up on the screen here for you. This is a little school in the middle of Madrid, Santa Isabel, and there's no playground at all. It's just a vertical school.
Okay.
Yeah, very traditional Madrid. The kids' outdoor spaces on the roof, and that's it. So we built learning journeys all over Madrid. And this is the learning journey wall when you come into the school. And you follow the colours, and they take you on a learning journey. And in fact, here are the kids off on their learning journey.
Oh yeah! Wow.
What you notice, by the way, there is that there's only one teacher and a lot of kids, and that's because all the local community are looking out for the kids. There are people up here on the balconies, people in the doorways, in the shops. They see the kids coming past, they look out for them. So, so there's a real sense of, and then it grows. The kids on one of the walks were looking at music, and they were going to a recording studio and looking at music shops and all sorts. And one of the group of musicians they visited said, well, why don't we put on a concert for you? So with the kids, they arranged a concert in the town square, just was like a kind of a, sort of pop-up concert. They just rocked up and put on this jazz. Kids didn't know enough about jazz. Let's do a jazz concert, And this is actually my favourite picture from all that. This is the kids on a Saturday morning getting ready to take their parents on a learning journey. So they're saying, hey, there's so much to learn in Madrid. You've got to come with us and we'll show you what we've learned. So, at a stroke, the community, the folk in the housing, the parents, the weekend, before and after school is all part of learning. And you don't have to have a revolution to say we're going to tear up the way we do things in our school. You just do something a little different and suddenly it all changes. Here's another nice little example. And this is we started looking at food because we were aware that I do a lot of work on the impact of learning environment on your brain, if you get the light levels right and the CO2 and so on, your brain works better. But nobody seemed to have much on what you might call brain food. And I'll put a URL in the chat window in a minute. So these are primary kids. They set up as sort of scientists to explore what food is good for your brain, and then they involve lots of people, including, by the way, a Michelin star chef. It's Madrid, so people care about food. So they said, look, here's the ingredients. What the heck can you cook with turmeric? What can you do with kimchi? Because these are all very good for your brain, but there aren't a lot of kimchi recipes. It's just like you eat it. And here they are presenting their work to parents. You'll notice they're wearing white coats because they say, well, we're researchers in all this. So that's sort of not saying to the kids, here's a new way we're going to do it, but saying to the kids, might there be a new way to do it? You're the researchers, let's find out, let's try different things, is really important. And, we're in a world where we've given them a certainty in education in the hope that it prepares them for uncertainty. Well, nothing could be further than the truth. And you only have to look at your politicians who struggled, regardless of party in politics, they struggled to cope with the surprise. They didn't cope with COVID, they're not coping very well with Ukraine, they're certainly not coping with climate change, because they all went to school in a model of certainty, this is what you will be doing when, and this is where you will be sitting when. So somehow we've got to inject uncertainty, and you can't just tear up the whole school and say, we're doing it differently tomorrow. So these little moments of injection really, really, really work. And my slightly favourite one, and this is a bit insane really, but nothing is permanent. So here we are in Rome, and in the basketball season they inflate a basketball court, and in the off season it goes down again, and here's a court in the middle of the school grounds, and they just blow it up, and they didn't need any planning permission because it's not permanent. And this is right by the Vatican, so you can barely build a bicycle rack. They built this enormous court because they're saying, well, we'll do a bit of that now and a bit of this then and a bit, just moving it around and changing it. This is a school we just opened in Lima, in Peru, and I can't see the boundary between outdoor and indoor here. The school it's outdoors, it's indoors, it's everything, and the resource that is the community, that is the environment, that's the flora and the fauna. All of that is part of learning. And a very small part of that needs to be timetabled. I mean, of course, people look for maths and English scores and so on. But what we've learned over many years really is that if the kids are loving doing it, performance is not the problem. If the kids aren't enjoying it, performance is the problem, and you've really got to, we must focus on that because they need that. If they're enjoying doing it, they go through the roof. And you all know the story of Mark Hypham College in Adelaide. I was thinking in residence there, when I started, 4% of those kids had university places, and 4%, and I forget now how many graduated high school, but were still there at the end of high school. But it was a small number, and I was there 4 years after it opened, and 100% completed high school. They didn't want to leave, because what they were doing was so engaging, and so a big thing here is how do you put the engagement back in, and the kids are going to be part of that. They've absolutely got to be part of that, and you want to look really hard at your vocabulary. Don't call them students, don't call them pupils, call them researchers, ask them for feedback, pass them in the playground, say, well, what did you think of that assembly yesterday? But how was that? Just constantly ask them for their feedback and be seen to listen, 2 ears, 1 mouth, the rule.
Stephen, the last thing you'd want in that Lima area, just looking at it in terms of how the biophilic nature of it, indoor, outdoor, the actual ubiquitous nature and transition of young to old and people working in different modes there. Geez, throwing a traditional timetable and saying you need to stop now and move to another part of the school would just seem like, criminal, wouldn't it, sort of thing, in that, because of that, the way that the space design, the way, I think whatever the painter or drawer was meant to show, and how people were moving through there, and having that, being able to be nimble and agile, and
yes, that's something we did in the university, which we do, UCJC. I mean, very brave, by the way, of you to attempt the name of the university.
Sorry.
UCJC. I mean, we brought a bunch of primary kids into the university and said, what do you like most about your primary classrooms? And they said, we really like the Harkness tables, where you sit around and you have a conversation. There's no end to it. You can get your lunch out and keep eating and stay on topic. Project-based learning, exactly as you heard earlier. And we said, well, tell you what, in cardboard, build the perfect classroom in the university, which they did. And as you could see, and then we said, oh, okay, we'll build it. So we took that cardboard classroom and built it. And that is one of our most popular teaching spaces. So, 9 and 10-year-olds designed a space for 19 and 20-year-olds, and we can't keep them out. Their voice is so important in all this. Really, really is.
Thanks, Stephen. Mel, has there been any questions that's popped up, or anyone from the group might want to pop up now and ask our guests some questions from the floor, or share an idea? While you're thinking about that, I was going to actually mention that, and if Lou was going to be here, she would remember it back at Northern Beaches Christian School. I remember, if you have a timetable that's established and is working well and the schedule's working well, probably in the midst of everything that's happening in the middle of the year or middle of a learning journey or episode or term, etc., you don't want to actually shake up the timetable too much. But there are some things you can do. And I remember visiting MBCS a number of times when they would just shut down the timetable for 2 days, and year levels and all were doing different things. I do remember in the days of the Maker movement, it was days of the Maker movement, before there was actually a whole lot of technology to support it. It was about, we're just going to shut down a school, and from P to 12, for the couple of days, we're just going to work on what is the idea, what can we make, design, create, what sort of conversations can we have between classrooms and all that. So you do have the flexibility to try some of that, and probably what that might do, that could actually then show those people who are sitting on the fence going, wow, it's some meaningful discussion and rich discussion. And, dare I say, some diverse and exciting and motivational topics are then stumbled upon. And you don't have to stick to the structure of saying, I'm only going to talk about that during that lesson or that period of time or just within that silo of that subject. So I have noticed a number of schools do that. And there was another couple of schools I was just thinking of that have done similar things like that.
Let me just show you one. I mean, this is a Discovery Day in an Australian school, and they just shut down the whole timetable for a day and got on with they're actually building a cardboard model of their village, and you will see the teachers all wearing coloured hats, and the hats help the kids because there's a lot of teachers now in the space. So if you're stuck and you're looking for help, you look for the person with the blue hat, and if you finish early and you want something a bit more extending, you're looking for the yellow hat, she's over there, and so on. So very simple. Of course, it's all about cues and clues. There's a semiotics of the classroom we could have a whole spend the day on, but just shut the place down for a day and do something extraordinary. And I'll tell you what, when the kids graduate, the thing they'll remember will be that day. And here's I think one of my favourite examples. This is my daughter runs this. That's her over there. This is our beach school here. So we have a beach school runs on the beach for preschool children, and there you can see they're down there with the little handheld microscopes and things. These are 4-year-olds, but what happened was really interesting. They went into school, obviously the next year, and said, well, there's a whole lot of stuff happening on the beach. This is the time of year when the baby crabs are born, and this is when we want to see when the jellyfish arrive because that tells us about water temperatures and so on. So the school has now put into its regular curriculum beach school days.
Oh, nice.
And just evacuate down onto the beach and carry on. So this is 4-year-olds saying, we don't want to stop doing this stuff. No. We want to carry on. And the school's saying, we hear you, and we'll just move a little bit. They haven't torn up the school day. They just occasionally, they're down on the beach. And it really, really works. This is learner-led stuff, and it's really powerful.
Thanks, Stephen. I think we have a question, Mel.
Yeah, we do, and it's a good one. It's come from Michael. He's in Hervey Bay. It said that shifting to a non-traditional timetable can be a significant cultural change for a school. Parents often have concerns about how it's going to impact outcomes, student well-being, preparation for the future. So the question is about, for the panel, what strategies have we seen work well in bringing the community along for this journey, ensuring they understand the benefits and feel confident in their approach? I feel like all of us are going to have lots of answers here. So it's an amazing question, Michael. Something I definitely grappled with in senior leadership, in a deputy role and as the principal, is how do you bring on board? Because I think we all really there's enough evidence and data to show that this is an imperative change that has to happen. And we have a moral imperative to do this. We have enough data now, I feel like, and evidence around why the change has to happen. So it's how we now articulate that to, let's remember, we all went through this traditional timetable, right? It's kind of like how we help parents understand parenting because they've never seen it before in the technological age. So that bringing along why, super important. David, I know you're bursting at the seams, so I might jump to you first.
I was going to say, our situation was we were collapsing in size. We were nearly ready for closure as our school. So we had to collapse classes. We were using a traditional timetable, collapse year levels, etc., etc., etc. And we didn't tell the parents. We literally did not tell the parents that we combined year 8 and 9 geography. Didn't do it. We did it for a couple of years, and then we came under the notion of we've got to do something differently. So we merged. It took us 5 years to go through the process of change. A couple of things was we had to get our staff on board, and we got the staff on board by making them say, what would you want? If you could teach anything in the world, what would it be? And that's where a lot of our courses came from. So we got the staff on board. Those staff that weren't on board, we said that's fine, and they drifted off eventually and found other. And we actually found them jobs. Once we then held a lot of information nights and told parents about the process, about the program, and we were very apprehensive. I will tell you right now, we thought this is either going to go great or going to go bust, and there was dead silence at the end of it. This was like a 40-minute presentation, and then we just got claps because people are going, why couldn't we have done this when we went to school? Yeah, so the notion of making your learning relevant to what's happening in the world was the key thing. And so now people just said, go for it, go for it, go for it. Staff are happy with it because staff have a voice in it. The students have a voice in the program because that's the big thing. Everybody needs to have a voice in the learning process. If you don't give everybody a voice in the learning process, it's going to collapse on you. Because what you think is going well could be totally wrong compared to what everybody else is thinking going on. And it's a simple thing as Stephen said about furniture. Schools traditionally buy the furniture. Do they ever ask the kids what the furniture they want to have? And so when you'll be shocked. What we thought was good furniture, they literally hate it. So it's voice to everybody. Everybody needs to be a part. Everybody needs to have ownership. But I would say you never rush it. Because if you rush it, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, they're
Thanks.
really good tips and tricks. And I was just thinking the same thing. The times where I've embarked on trying to disrupt in a school has been, where can I start and have impact to also show how the success model in our school for our parents and how the students almost then demand the change as well.
It's hard to change if things are going well. Like the notion of don't waste a good crisis is really good, because if you have a crisis, people know change has to happen. And we had a crisis, so it wasn't easy, but we could see a path behind us. I can understand big established traditional schools, how it would be difficult for them to change because that's what everybody's used to and it seems to work for them. But does it really work? That's the question. It might look like it works, but is everybody just towing the line because that's what they think has to happen?
David, can I also say that from my reflection about your college, you did a lot of that consultational, and then I think you basically tipped the whole thing on its head once you knew you had everything. There might be another way of going whereby people can dip their toes in the water and make gradual changes. I'm thinking for those sandstone traditional schools, they might be able to take a couple of days and just, and that might cause, a bit of a stress for some of the staff there, maybe if they've been there 60 or 70 years. But I'm just saying that, they might be able to take a couple of days and turn off the timetable, or absolutely, based on a discovery day or discovery week, etc., and then do it that way too. Hey.
Yeah, what's the worst thing can happen? Didn't work. But you've learned something in the process. What you did wasn't any good. And we actually did that. We said to staff, you know what, if you want to give a crack at something, go ahead and do it. We'll make it work for you. If you want to spend 3 days to go ahead and do it, So it's like, people go, oh, my child's missed a day of school. I go, yeah, I did. Big deal. It's only one day of the rest of their life, so for me, time is not the issue of missing time. It's actually what you do with that time that you've got is the crucial part. And if you do it right, it just works. So we had a couple of teachers who trialed some courses for us, and we didn't tell the parents what we were doing. We said, and the kids go, well, that was pretty good. We didn't mind doing that. And so that's where we got the notion of it's okay to try things and it's okay to fail. Because once you fail, you also learn, and you learn, well, I'm not doing that again, but you move on and try something different. And that's my whole philosophy. Try it, no, it didn't work, do something else. And I call it the Disney principle. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. If it does work, keep it going. You just got to be brave.
And David, can I also add that there's a level of trust there that the community and government put in to the school, and the parents have a level of trust there. So putting stuff on I always equate it to a billboard on a highway, to say that we're going to throw out the timetable and put it on the billboard, it's probably not, I'm not saying that you would agree with this, David, but I'm just saying try those ways that you guys are going to have a lot of consultation, make the changes, be subversive in some of those changes too, just to test them out, because the community does trust the school to try these things. Yet if you put it up and say 2026, no timetable, and get excited, then that's going to actually scare people, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I had a parent, we did our presentation, said to me, when did education change? I said, well, it didn't, but it should have, because the world's changed millions of times in the last 20 years, but we're still stuck, 20, 50, 100 years ago. So there's a big disparity between what's happened now and what should be happening. And that notion is like education stuck in a rut. And but the world keeps moving on. And so yeah, our next big thing is to actually look at reporting on their soft skills and not so much on their academics.
Yeah, there's a moral imperative here as well. We're doing work in Africa and all over really. But if you go to Yemen or you go to Kashmir or you go to Ukraine or wherever, there are enormous numbers of kids, Gaza, who haven't got schools and haven't got teachers, and they won't ever have. 30 million kids in Kashmir, and even if you sort of had a ratio of 30 to 1 of teachers, we're not going to find 1 million teachers overnight. So we're very lucky, you're very lucky to have wealth, stability. When did you last have a war? It's a very rare thing. And with that wealth and opportunity, we need to push forward a bit and say, this is how it can be. And to try things out costs a little bit more money, costs a little bit more time, but we don't